Any just anything to write with? Yeah, pen, pencil. That doesn't have any.
Ma, you need this?
No.
I'll find another one.
Does it have a tip? Okay.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Thank you. Gracias.
She would shoot me if I threw it.
So cute, throw it. Got a little skinny.
The other day I heard this thing about
This is my everything book.
about the guy that invented the light. What's his name?
Thomas Edison.
Yep. And he was a son of seven siblings, so he was one of 7. And they actually he went to school, and within 2 weeks of him started, they actually send his mum a note, and the mum looks at it. She puts it down and starts weeping, and the son, Thomas, asks him, "Mum, what's wrong?" She says, "Son, the school can't take you any longer because you're that smart. I'm going to have to homeschool you." So to him, he kept on going, and we know who Thomas Edison intended to be. But when his mum passed away, he found the letter, and he opened it, and then it was his time to weep because the letter said, "Mrs. Edison, we find that through the schooling that we've done to your children, he needs a special referral. There's something mentally wrong with him, and we do not accept him anymore at this class, at the school." And sometimes it goes to show what people, the question was, how much do you believe in people? And the mum saw way past his capabilities, and he went down in history for doing, what he did. But if she had listened to the school,
Where'd that voice coming from?
we look to the heavens.
It says gullible on the ceiling.
Pablo on the ceiling, nah, he's over there.
Test 1, 2.
That.
We have our own story. Because Abigail couldn't be school.
Couldn't be.
They literally, her homeroom teacher got to the point of laughing. She was like, I would stick a piece of paper in front of her, and then she'd fill out the page, but I couldn't get her to do any work in the classroom, couldn't get her to do finish assignments. Just nothing. Who's the one who works in my office?
Yeah, yep. But that goes to show something to schools.
Yeah, no.
I actually called myself sitting at the table this week.
She doesn't learn for it. She just sit there and work out the answers.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Wow, it's just
Shabbat was too good, so.
it's Shabbat somewhere in the world. Still.
Yes.
Okay.
Shabbat shalom. Yeah, he wants a piece.
Let's pray. That's right. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, we thank you for this beautiful Shabbat we've had. We ask, Father, that your blessing will be upon your word as we read and as we study it. Father, that you would reveal to us the things that you have for us, that you will fulfill the purpose for which you send your word to us. May I diminish and only you be seen. Father, whatever you want to tell us today, may I be out of the picture and you speaking through your Spirit to all of us. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen.
All right, so we ended up last week talking about what? Yeah, we've been doing the apologetic series, but what did we speak about last week?
Hebrews.
Second Exodus.
The Hebrews. The second Exodus, yeah. We talked about the second Exodus.
Euphrates. Crossing Euphrates.
Hebrews, we are called Hebrews. Why? Because we take on the promises of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. Because we believe by faith we are counted as children of Abraham, children of faith. Therefore, the children of God, Israel of God, are those who come to Him through faith, not necessarily just of the flesh, even though the flesh is important. It's not the ultimate desire as to who is Israel. Israel are those who turn to God with all their heart, mind, and soul. So today we're going to talk about that promise that was made to Him and to our forefathers. Yep?
Yep.
Alright, so we're going to talk about the promise. We're going to look at the covenant and the law. And what's in between all those three things. Are they all the same? Are they different? What is what? Genesis 15. Who likes to read?
Ian.
Christopher.
We haven't heard you read in a while, actually.
Yeah.
Christopher's going to read all Genesis 15 for us.
Go for it.
Muy bien.
So that.
The whole thing?
Yes.
After these things, the word of Yehovah came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Lord Yehovah, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of Yehovah came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in Yehovah, and he counted it to him for righteousness. And he said unto him, I am Yehovah, that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord Yehovah, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another. But the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. And lo, an aura of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass that when the sun went down, and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace, and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the same day Yehovah made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites and the Kenizzites, and the Cadmonites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Rephaims, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Girgashites, and the Jebusites.
Amen.
Amen.
So lots of stuff in there. That's the promise that God gives to Abraham. We're going to look to some of that in a second. Verse 18, let's look at that again. To your descendants I give what? To your descendants I give the land. Okay, so let's make that careful with the cable. Yep. Sorry for that. To your descendants I give the land. So the promise is tied up to the land. Okay, let's have that clear. Right, what is it to do with dirt? Nothing to do with dirt. But this land was set apart, made holy, made set apart by God. He said in this land He puts His name on it. Right? This is the place that Yehovah has put His name on it. and is the bridal land, the land that he had chosen to give his bride. Now God owns the whole earth, right? But he set this land apart. Now the promise is that he will give this land, and he adds other things to it, right? Generations of men, as much as the stars of the heavens and of the sand of the sea and all that sort of stuff. But the main the main purpose of the promise was for them to inherit the land. Okay? So we're going to look at some of that stuff as well. It says in verse 4, an heir shall come from your own flesh. Note that Tamar was not his flesh. She was a concubine. Right? The concubine is not considered as his own flesh, as a wife. So wives, you're your husband's own flesh.
Were they still considered
They shall
one?
become, no, they're not considered wives. Unless they're married. If they're married, they're considered wives afterwards. But Tamar was not a wife. She was a concubine. And here it says, of your own flesh. So obviously Tamar was not his own flesh. In the question of marriage, it says they shall become one flesh. That's got nothing to do with the sexual act. It's got to do with the covenant of marriage. Some think it has to do with the other one, but it doesn't. It has to do with the covenant itself. Verse 5, descendants shall be as numerous as the stars. Count them if you can. Verse 7 and verse 15 points out that they shall inherit the land, as we said before. Verse 13, it promises that Israel will be slaves. And from that nation that they will be slaved, the nation will be judged, and they will be delivered. In how many generations? It actually tells you that how many generations. Four. Right? So there was a generation that was in the desert, yeah? That did not enter the land. That makes it 5. 5 generations before they entered back into the land. 5 is the number of mercy. We did a study on that ages ago. Did the promises begin there on Genesis 15 to Abraham? Or did they start earlier? What do you reckon?
I would go for earlier.
I'd say when he gave the actual tithing to Melchizedek.
I think when he said to him, go out from Ur.
Very good. Mary's got it. Alright, so it starts when he commands him to leave his father and mother, right?
Obedience?
Yep, begins with obedience. Let's go to Genesis 12, 1 to 4. Putting up 2 verses. And verse 7.
1 to 4.
Yep.
And Jehovah said to Abram, go yourself out of your land, from your relatives and from your father's house, to a land which I show you. And I shall make you a great nation, and bless you, make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I shall bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. And in you all the clans of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram left as Jehovah had commanded him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran.
7, verse 7.
And Jehovah appeared to Abram and said, to your seed I give this land. And he built there a slaughter place to Jehovah, who had appeared to him.
Amen. Can somebody read Hebrews 11?
All of it?
8 to 12.
8 to 12. By belief, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he was about to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By belief, he sojourned in the land of promise as a stranger, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking for the city having foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim. By belief also, Sarah herself was unable to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the normal age, because she deemed him trustworthy who had promised. To 12?
Yep.
And so from one and him as good as dead were born as numerous as the stars of the heaven, as countless as the sand which is by the seashore.
Amen. So he was as good as dead when he received the promise. Two things happened there, according to Hebrews 11, obedience and faith. Yep. So obedience and faith are not New Testament things. They're actually way back. Abraham was the one who God called his friend. And he gave him the promise because of his obedience and faith. They're not separate. They go together. Chapter 13, 14 to 18 of Genesis. Keep a finger in Genesis because we're going to go through the Genesis chapters a lot. Yep.
And after the Lord had separated from him, Jehovah said to Abram, Now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, and eastward and westward. For all the land which you see I shall give to you and your seed forever. And I shall make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could count the dust of the earth, then your seed also could be counted. Arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. So Abraham moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to Jehovah.
Amen. So there the limits, the first picture that we saw today. Right? It gives you the description of where the land that was promised was initially. And then through the wars that happened with Joshua and David, the land got expanded. Right? One of the reasons why the land was expanded is because the kings of Moab and Ammon, they didn't let the Israelites go past, right? And they started picking them off, the weak ones from the back, and so God got upset. Those lands were not going to be given, right? Because they belonged to the descendants of Lot. But later on, because they did the wrong thing, they lost the lands, and God gave them to Israel. So that's why Israel doubled its land by the end of the wars. A double portion, right? Right, so then chapter 15, the one that we read before, was actually the fulfillment of the previous promises that God had given. So God began by giving him a promise here and a promise there, and then by chapter 15 he gives it all together at once. This is when he actually makes the covenant. Right? Note that in these two promises he doesn't make a covenant with Abraham. What's the difference between the promises and the covenant itself? Can anybody tell me?
Promise can be one-sided.
Yeah,
God promised, so it is one-sided. What's the difference between the promise and the covenant?
Would it be like a
two-sided.
betrothal and a marriage?
No, it's much simpler than that.
You have to accept.
What's-
You've got two willing parties. One to actually propose, the other to accept.
Yeah,
Covenant
let's
is
read
two-sided.
verse chapter 15 again, see if you
That's what a
can
betrothal means.
pick what happened in chapter 15 that is different to a promise.
animal died.
Very good. Verse 9.
Need blood.
So, verse 9, there was blood.
Blood to be shed.
Sacrifice. Yeah. There was a sacrifice. Right? And if we look at the pictures, they were placed like that. And usually what would happen is one person will start from one side of the sacrifice and go to the other one.
Perfect 8.
Right?
Infinity.
So that's what would happen. Right? If I started here, I would end up in this side. Right? And if the other person that I was entering into covenant with, he would start there, we would meet in the middle, exchange something here in the middle, like a shoe, right? Or do a handshake or something along those lines. It would happen here in the middle,
Do both fists.
and then we will go to the other side. Right, so we would trade places. Right, and the sacrifice pieces were placed opposite to each other in the middle. Right? And what would happen in the middle of that is that the blood would run through. There would be a channel in the middle where the blood would run through. So virtually you both had to cross the river of blood, the threshold of blood. Right? So this is a threshold covenant again. But it says that God put Abraham to sleep, didn't it? Yeah. So what happened is that Abraham couldn't fulfill the part of his covenant. God knew that. God knew that his descendants would not be able to fulfill the covenant. So he put him to sleep. And God walked the covenant along because only he can keep that covenant. Only he can fulfill the covenant. We can't. No man can. Alright? So the difference between a covenant and the promise is that the covenant requires a sacrifice. There is a promise in the midst of the covenant, but the promise is separate to the covenant itself. The covenant is a ritual itself that requires the sacrifice in an exchange. Did the promise end with Abraham?
No.
How do we know?
Isaac and Jacob come into the picture. And with Jacob, the whole of Israel.
Galatians.
Because if the covenant was made just with Abraham, what were the terms of the covenant?
Keep my commandments.
We read them before. An heir shall come from your flesh, descendants numerous as the stars. They will inherit the land. Israel will be enslaved and delivered
And then return.
and return to the land 5 generations later. So, there are promises for future generations. Right?
Yep.
So, we're talking about a generational promise, a promise of future tense. Yep. So, it can't end with Abraham because it's to his descendants. The promise is for his descendants, that he would have his descendants inherit the land. So, Isaac. Let's read Genesis 26, 2-4.
Then Adonai appears to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land about which I tell you. Live as an outsider in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For you and to your seed I will give you all these lands. I will confirm my pledge that I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your seed like the stars of the sky, and I will give your seed all these lands. And in your seed all the nations of the earth will be continually be blessed."
Amen. Notice that this is the place where we always quote, "The nations shall be blessed in Abraham's seed." The nations shall be blessed in your seed, Abraham.
This was to Jacob.
This was given to Isaac. Sorry, this is the part about Abraham's seed. So let's read Genesis 26, verse 23 to 25. Yep, so God was speaking to Isaac. Sorry, 26. 23 to 25. Same chapter.
So 23 to 24.
23 to 25.
He went up from there to Beersheba.
Beersheba.
Adonai appeared to him that night and said, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you, and I will bless you and multiply your seed for the sake of Abraham my servant." So he built an altar there and called on the name of Adonai. He pitched his tent there, and Isaac's servants
Yep.
out a well there.
Dug a well, yep. Alright, so that's
Is there one more?
23 to 25, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Note that this time he's saying to Isaac, in your seed the nations shall be blessed. Right? Nations shall be blessed in your Isaac seed. He mentions this for the sake of Abraham, but it's in his seed. So the same promise that was given to Abraham is now given to Isaac. Right? It's confirmed. So the covenant is confirmed. So the covenant is confirmed by the promise. So the fact that God reiterated the promise to Isaac confirms that the covenant is still valid. Yep? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Let's see Isaac's blessing on his son. So the next one is Jacob. And we'll find that in Genesis 27. (27 to 29). And we're going to read 28 as well. If somebody can start with 27 for me.
27 to 29.
Yep.
And he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his garments, and blessed him, and said, "See, the smell of my son is like the smell of the field in which Jehovah has blessed. And Elohim gives you of the dew of the heavens, of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master over your brothers, and let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed are those who bless you.
So what were the blessings there? Can we list them? What were the blessings?
May people serve down and may serve you, and may nations bow down to you.
Yeah, people serve you and nations bow down to you. What's the other one about the fatness of the earth?
The dew of Shamayim, the fatness of earth, and plenty of grain and wine.
So the
Jew.
double portion of Ephraim, the fullness and the fatness
And
of the earth.
For him to be masters over his brothers.
Yep, master of his brothers.
And
Alright.
whoever curses him will be cursed.
Yep. The blessings and the curses on those who bless and curse Israel. Awesome. So, sorry, Jacob is Israel. I'm taking what? Israel. Okay, 28, 3 and 5.
28, 3 and 5. And El Shaddai bless you, and make you bear fruit and increase you, and shall become an assembly of people, and give you the blessing of Abraham to you and your seed with you, so that you inherit the land of your sojournings which Elohim gave to Abraham. So Isaac went to Jacob away, and he sent to Paddan Aram, to Laban, son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah and the mother of Jacob and Esau.
Now that word there, an assembly of peoples. Right? That correlates back to nations.
Yep.
To being nations, an assembly of peoples. Anyway.
Is that the word Kehillah?
Kehillah, yep, an assembly. What about Esau? Genesis 27, 39 to 41. Genesis 27, back a little bit.
And Isaac his father answered and said to him, See, your dwelling is of the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of the heavens from above. And by your sword you are to live, and serve your brother. And it shall be, when you grow restless, that you shall break his yoke from your neck. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father draw near. Then I am going to kill my brother Jacob.
Right, so Esau will live by his sword. Right? Have you heard of the Sunnis?
Yes.
When it's bright outside, it's
The Sunnis. The Shiites and the Sunnis. The Sunnis.
Heard of Shiites?
Yep. Shiites are the Arabs, basically. The Sunnis are northern, Iraq, Iran, Assyria, all those guys.
they're Arabs too.
Some Arabs, not all. Just the southern Israel part of the Arab nation. All the Moabites, Edomites, all the ites. They're the Esau of the Bible. Now Esau married the daughter of Ishmael,
Ishmaelites.
right? Which is the Arabs, the actual Arabs, Ishmael, descendants of Ishmael. So, anyway.
So Ishmael was blessed.
Yeah.
So,
Esau wasn't.
but Esau wasn't. So what does that make their children?
Half blessed.
Mediocre.
Well,
Half
You're almost
Esau.
there.
baked. Half baked.
You're almost there.
Esau didn't take the promise of Ishmael.
I didn't.
He's got his own promise. Because he married his daughter becomes part of his house. So she got cursed.
Wow.
But anyway, having said that, There's still a lot to go. It says that Esau hated his brother. Yep. That's still the case today.
Yep.
And it says that he had promised to kill his brother, which is still happening today. So nothing has changed. The family feud still raging on.
So what about the Shias?
What about the Shiites?
What about the Ishmaelites today?
The Ishmaelites, they're more the Arab nations. They're sort of outside of the scope. They're still, what's it called? Behind the Sunnis, but they hate each other more than they hate the Israelites. Between the Sunnis and the Shiites, they hate each other more.
Will the Turkish also come under the Sunnis?
Turkey's, yeah. Turkey. Turkestan. Turkey says Sunnis.
So is it just the descendants the descendants of Esau that have the major problem with Israel?
Yeah.
The donkeys are from the Muslim world.
So, yeah, we're not
So
going
From the Bible.
Yeah.
so when we're getting into Palestine and
Palestinians are basically was part of Egypt grow up, and all the people that had taken over the land during the 2,000 years that Israel wasn't in the land, mainly East, West Arabian nations and Jordan. So
He's trying to make us relate.
West Arabia,
With the Catholic
West Arabia, and
I think everybody was like
Jordan.
He also said East.
What's it called?
I'll
And
start
then you
there.
got the
Start
Syria.
wonder if it was
you really like what you see.
No, what did I do?
Nothing. You'll see it in the video.
The crucifix.
¿Sabe?
Pablo.
Le faltó, te lo juro por esto.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing now. Hold on. No Asians. What's it called? Assyrians.
Syrians are Asians too.
Yeah.
Yeshua is Asian.
I don't want to.
She was saying that.
Let's leave it like that. Okay. Assyrians.
Are you serious?
Anyway, get back. Pagans.
No, Pabs, you also said this, East and West.
East and West.
From his perspective, yes.
No, from our perspective it is, but from his it's not.
Yeah.
For the video's sake.
Alright, get back. So, West Arabia, Jordan, Assyrians. West Arabia also part of Egypt, towards Egypt. Towards Egypt. So these guys were all in the land, and then when Israel took over, they were confined to the, what's it called? What is now Gaza. So they're a mixture of all these guys.
Historians.
The Philistines, like the Philistines. They're the ancient Philistines. Philistines?
That's good enough.
That's good enough.
Philistines.
Palestinians.
Palestinians or Philistines. That was given by the Roman government.
Goliath's
That name.
family.
So Moabites and Edomites come from this side, Moab,
Mosquito bites.
Edom, south of the Jordan. Anyway, so that's where we're going. Those guys are descendants of Esau. More to that side are the descendants of Ishmael. Which are the, what do they call them now? The ones with the tents.
Nomads.
The nomads. What are the names? Where Jethro was from.
Midianite.
Midianites. Midianites are Ishmaelites.
What about Lot?
Lot the descendants of Lot
Environmentally
are
friendly.
Moab and Edom.
Wow.
So these are the descendants of Lot.
Environmentally
That's why those
friendly.
lands were not meant to go to Israel. But because Moab and Edom acted wrongly against Israel, their brother, literally, then God gave their lands to Israel. So that's why the expansion of the land happened. Alright, so that's enough for the history part.
Time for the future.
Important to know what where Esau is and where Ishmael is, because at the end times Ishmael reinforces Israel. It comes back as part of Israel. It actually joins Israel in the end times. This prophecy about Egypt. My son, today I have forgiven you. There's some projects about Egypt being the strengthening body during the second exodus of Israel back to the land. So there's a lot of promises that you need to know about end times concerning these two houses. Three really. Israel, Esau, and Ishmael. And back to the promise of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The promise of the land. Numbers 34, 1 to 12. Just gonna erase this.
Um, 1 to 12.
So it's Numbers 34, 1 to 12, yeah?
And Jehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Command the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land of Canaan, this is the land which falls to you as an inheritance, the land of Canaan to its boundaries. Then your southern border shall be from the wilderness of Sin along the borders of Edom, and your southern border shall be eastward from the end of the Salt Sea. Then your border shall turn from the southern side of the ascent of Akrabim, continue to Sin, and be on the south of Kadesh Barnea, and it shall go on to Hatzar Adar, and continue to Atzmon. And the border shall turn from Atzmon to the Wadi of Mitzrayim, and it shall end at the sea. As for the western border, you shall have the great sea for a border. This is your western border. And
Yep, 12.
And this is your northern border. From the great sea you mark out your border to Mount Or. And from Mount Or you mark out your border to the entrance of Hamath. And the edge of the border shall be towards Sedad. And the border shall proceed to Ziphron, and it shall end at the Hatzar Enan. This is your northern border. And you shall mark out your eastern border from Hatzar Enan to Shepham, and the border shall go down from Shepham to Riblah on the east side of Ain, and the border shall go down and reach to the eastern side of the sea of Kinnereth, and the border shall go down along the Yarden, and it shall end at the Salt Sea. This is your land with its surrounding boundaries.
Okay, Deuteronomy 1:8.
See, I have put the land before you. Go in and possess the land which Jehovah swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to
Isaac.
Israel, and to Jacob, to give to them and their seed after them.
So the first one is the original borders that were given. Second one is the commandment where God tells Israel to go in and possess that land which they have been promised. The fulfillment of taking back the land. Deuteronomy 19:8 to 9. Anyone?
Suppose Adonai your God enlarges your territory as he has sworn to your fathers, and he gives you all the land that he promised to give you to your fathers. When you take care to do all this mitzvah that I am commanding you today, to love Adonai your God and to walk in his ways, then you are to add 3 more cities for yourself besides these 3.
Amen. So this is the promise of the enlargement of the land. God told them they would have the land enlarged. Let's have a quick look at the giving of the Torah itself. Exodus 19. We're going to read from verse 1 to 6. For homework, read from chapters 19 to 24. Okay, that's your homework. That's the whole giving of the Torah, the whole complete part of it. But let's read just 1 to 6.
Can I read?
Yeah.
In the 3rd month after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, on this day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. For they departed from Rephidim and had come to the wilderness of Sinai, and camped in the wilderness. So Israel camped there before the mountain. And Moshe went up to Elohim, and Yehovah called to him from the mountain, saying, This is what you are to say to the house of Jacob, and declare to the children of Israel. You have seen what I did to the Mitzrites, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. And now, if you diligently obey my voice, and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a reign of priests, and a blessed nation, and a set-apart nation. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel.
So all the earth is mine. If you keep my Torah, God's Torah, my instructions, you will live there. You will live in the land. Right? What's the wowing?
And now if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the people.
Right. Keep my Torah. The Torah itself is equated with the covenant. In fact, the Torah itself is the terms of that covenant. Yep. Guys, the cable. Karen. The Torah itself is the terms of the covenant. Does that make sense?
If you keep my Torah.
If you keep my covenant, if you keep my Torah, basically, because we see in other parts where God says, if you keep my Torah, then these things will happen, right? Deuteronomy 28 all the way to 31, 32. Right, the blessings and the cursings, and about the possessing of the land. It's all tied up together. So the Torah are the terms of the covenant, and the covenant came because of the promise. So that's the connection. Can we see that? Torah is the terms of the covenant that came because of the promise. Torah, the covenant, and the promise. Right? They all relate to each other. You can't have one without the other. Right? You can't have the promise without the covenant. Because the promise would be just a promise. Nothing would happen there. God is not bound to keeping that promise unless there is a covenant by which he bound himself to it. Yeah, because he bound himself, there has to be terms and conditions to that covenant. That's where the Torah comes in. Those are the terms and conditions by which that covenant came to be because of the promise of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, if you take the law away from the covenant is null and void. Yeah? And if the covenant is null and void, the promise is null and void. So then we have no covenant, no promise, no law. They're all tied up together. Galatians 3:8. Next week we'll start with Galatians. Galatians 3:8. And I expect all the youth to interact next week. Since you guys already did it. All of you.
Yes, that would be a special help.
Christopher is not in the youth.
So I expect the youth to come prepare next week.
Yeah, but was Christopher right?
Are we doing the teaching next week?
Chrissy's
Galatians 3:8.
sorry.
No, you're not.
You will be partakers.
Oh, sorry. The next time we come back to apologetics. Anyway, we might have something special.
Galatians 6:11.
Galatians 3:8. No, we're not going. Galatians 3:8.
And the scripture, having foreseen that Elohim would declare right the nations by belief, announced the good news to Abraham beforehand, saying, all the nations shall be blessed in you.
We read it before, right?
Mm-hmm.
In you, Abraham, all the nations shall be blessed.
Yep.
The nations shall come by faith, belief. So is there a new promise?
The same.
It's been
It's the same, right?
reiterated again.
It's reiterated, yeah. 3:8, Galatians 3:8 is talking about the same promise.
Yep.
Is there a different promise? No, it's the same promise.
Wow.
Is there a different covenant? No, it's the
Same
same covenant. Therefore, same terms and conditions. Torah stands then, right? You can't separate them, right? It has to be the same. You take one, you destroy all the others. In your seed, Abraham, all the nations shall be blessed. This is the gospel, right? It says there, doesn't it?
Yep.
The gospel or the good news. What do we used to believe the gospel was?
The death
Being
and
saved.
resurrection.
Death and resurrection.
But
and
there
the
was a prayer available to us to do.
so,
And we were saved by grace, one's own and one only.
right. Was that the gospel according to this?
No, not at all.
No. The gospel is in the promise of Abraham. The good news is bound to the promise of Abraham. The good news is bound to the covenant of Abraham. The good news is bound to the laws of that covenant given at Mount Sinai. You see how everything has been twisted away from the truth.
Yep.
Galatians 3:8 tells you that. Hebrews 8. Who likes to read? A better promise. What is that all about? Let's read Hebrews 8. You can read fast.
What is that?
Hebrews 8.
Hebrews 8.
Hebrews 8.
We can find Hebrews.
1 to
I
13.
found it already, but
Okay.
You need to give other people a go.
yes.
Spent too much time on this side.
Who wants to read all of it? Or
I'll
should we
read
break
all
it in
of it.
half?
Verse 8.
Why? I read too much.
Oh, it gets complicated, one verse each.
Everyone reads.
Gets messy.
Everyone reads the whole chapter.
How many
Well,
verses?
there's
you got?
13. There's 13. It's 2
So-
actually. One,
Seven.
6 and 7.
Yeah. 7 first and then we'll read 6.
Now the summary of what we are saying is we have such a Kohen Hagdol who's seated at the right hand of the throne. High priest, that is.
Yeah.
Who's seated at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens, and who serves the Mishdash and in the true tent in which Jehovah put up and not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and slaughtering. So it was also necessary for this one to have somewhat to offer. For if indeed he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer the gifts of according to the Torah, who serve a copy of the shadow of the heavens. And Moshe was warned when he was about to make the tent, for he said, "See that you make all according to the pattern shown you on the mountain." But now he has obtained a more excellent service, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was constituted on better promises. For if that first had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second. 1 to 7.
All right, next one. Please read the next part. 8, onward.
For finding fault with them, he says, "See, the days are coming, says Jehovah, when I shall conclude with the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah a renewed covenant, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Mitzrayim, because they did not continue in my covenant, and I disregarded them, says Jehovah. Because this is the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, says Jehovah, giving my laws in their mind, and I shall write them on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall by no means teach each one his neighbor, and each one his brother, saying, Know Jehovah, because they all shall know me from the least of them to the greatest of them. Because I shall forgive their unrighteousness and their sins, and their lawlessness I shall no longer remember. By saying renewed, he has made the first old. Now what becomes old and growing aged is near disappearing.
Okay. Some translates that in a different light, right? It says because it is old, it becomes obsolete. Now we have some issues with those translations. Also, some translate instead of renewed, a new covenant, right? So let's look at that from the covenant point of view. If it's a new covenant, we need a new promise.
We need a new sacrifice.
And we need a new sacrifice. Well, we can say, yeah, we can have those.
Yeshua.
We can have those. We have a new promise in Yeshua. We have a new covenant in His blood, and because of His sacrifice, and we just don't need the old covenant at all, right? The problem that I have with that is that we're missing one component. So you have the promise, right? And you have the covenant. What are we missing?
Terms and conditions.
The terms and conditions, T&Cs, right? What we call the Torah, or the law. There has to be a new law.
But isn't that spelled out in verse 8 when it says, the finding fault with them, he says, see the days are coming, that Jehovah, when I shall conclude with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, and a renewed covenant. Wouldn't that be the terms?
Right, so, in terms of the first covenant, I found in the book of Exodus and in Deuteronomy 5, Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5, the Ten Commandments.
Yep.
Right? So, and the consequential laws that come after in Deuteronomy. So the problem is that if we do away with the first covenant, then all those laws are void and null.
So we need new ones.
Yeah. So those laws don't apply. So therefore, tithe is no longer applicable. First of all, tithe is no longer applicable. The Levitical priesthood is done away with. The Aaronic priesthood is done away with. What else? The Ten Commandments are done away with. So you can kill, murder. You can have your neighbor's wife. Everything else, you don't have to obey your parents and honor them. What else is there? You can take the name of your God and bring it to nothing.
You can kill, lie, destroy.
Yep. So all those commandments are void. There is none of those commandments. Right? The only thing that's left is basically
Don't eat
what
blood.
Yeshua gave in Matthew chapter 6. That's about
The
it.
attitudes.
The Beatitudes. And even then, they're not really commandments. So there is no Torah, no law in this.
Lawless.
This covenant, if it's a new one and a new promise, then there is no law attached to it. There are no terms and conditions. So you can do whatever you want.
What about like the stuff Peter said and Paul as well?
Paul said a lot of laws.
Yes, Paul and Peter, no. They don't make the covenant, right? So the covenant was made by Yeshua in his own blood and all that sort of stuff. So if the new covenant is in Yeshua, and this is a new thing, and a new promise was given, a better promise according to the interpretation of this Hebrews 8. If this is the case, then we are lawless. We don't have a law that we need to observe or abide by. Basically, the law of your conscience. That's the only thing you've got to abide by. But God knows my heart. Whatever your heart desires, it's law. There are no precepts of what you need to do or not need to do. You want to worship a false god, you can. Absolutely. You want to worship many gods, you can. You want to eat pork and seashell food and all that stuff, you can. If this is a new covenant. But I submit to you that this is wrong. This understanding is wrong. It's not a new covenant as such, but a renewed one. We're going to look at some of the words that are used there, because it is important to understand when we're reading that we're not reading in English or in Spanish or in native languages. We're reading something that was written in the ancient languages.
Greek.
Right, in this case, we're going to look at some of the Greek terms.
Wow, that sounds really good.
Can I just point something out? In number 10 says, because of this, the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yehovah, giving my laws in their minds, and I shall write them on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall by no means teach one another, his neighbor, and each one his brother, saying, Know Yehovah, because they all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, because I shall forgive their unrighteousness and their sins and their lawlessness, and I shall no longer remember.
Yeah.
So he's going to put the teaching, the Torah in our hearts.
Yeah. So whatever my heart wants to do, I can do, because I know the Torah in my heart.
Yeah, right.
Also, notice, I'll just point out some stuff, because you're making a good point. The issue is that this is in future tense terms.
That's right, that's what it
Right?
says.
It says, everyone shall know me to the least to the greatest.
Yeah.
Does everybody know Yeshua yet?
Nope.
No.
Wow, then we have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Either God was lying,
Or it hasn't happened, right?
or it hasn't happened yet.
Not only that, this was after Yeshua's crucifixion.
Yeah, of course, it's after.
So,
Would this be in the 1,000-year reign?
Of course. That's a millennial reign.
Yes, because in
promise.
number 8 it
The
says
millennials are gonna
that when I shall include with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah a renewed covenant, so it's going to take place exactly then.
So the
Two
actual,
houses come together.
the actual one, it's in Jeremiah 31. So if you want to look at that up, 31, 31 to 34. So it's only 3 verses. If you want to look at that one up, it gives you a little bit more clarity as to what he's talking about, the actual prophecy itself. If somebody wants to read it, feel free.
So, Pablo, can I just make a quote?
Yeah.
By someone reading this literally, they could actually easily go in their own tank and say, "Oh, but the Bible says so," without having that before knowledge and the understanding of Torah.
Yeah.
Like King James.
Hence the stuff that we get taught nowadays in church.
31.
Yeah.
See, the days are coming, declares Jehovah,
when I shall make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Now, like the covenant, not like the covenant I made with their fathers, and in the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Mizraim, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Jehovah. 24. For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel. After those days, declares Jehovah, I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and write on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall they teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, Know Jehovah, for they shall all know me from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares Jehovah, for I shall forgive their wickedness and remember their sin no more.
It says, I shall put my Torah in their hearts.
So he couldn't have done away with it if he's saying that.
So is the Torah the New Testament?
No. It's in original instructions.
Did they have the New Testament
Nope.
in Jeremiah?
Nope. They couldn't have.
So what Torah is Jeremiah speaking of?
The only one.
5 books.
The only one. The original
It's
one.
only one.
And if it had been changed, wouldn't it violate Deuteronomy
4:2.
4 and 6?
4:2 and 12:6.
Would have violated the whole of Torah.
So Deuteronomy.
Everything.
Okay.
Can somebody read Deuteronomy 4:2 or say it if you know it? What does Deuteronomy 4:2 say?
I found it.
Should know it by heart by now, guys.
Do not add to the word which I command you, and do not take away from it, so as to guard the commands of Jehovah your Elohim, which I am commanding you.
You are not to add nor diminish from the words of Jehovah. You are not to add or diminish from the Torah. Not add, not take away. If Jeremiah was adding, he should have been stoned according to Deuteronomy 13. If Yeshua was adding to the Torah, he should have been stoned according to Deuteronomy 13. If Paul was adding to the Torah, he should have been stoned. If this new covenant went against the original terms of the covenant, whoever did it should be stoned. Right? According to Deuteronomy 13. Deuteronomy 13 test. Anyway, we're not going to go there, but let's just say, for argument's sake, the Torah shall be put in their hearts. Was the New Testament. That would make everything else void. Right? So anyone could do anything. That's called anarchy. Anarchy.
Isn't it also
Rebellious? Anarchy?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
C-H-I or?
We know what you're talking about.
C-H?
Why?
Anarchy. Right? Or lawlessness.
Isn't that also the apostasy?
Apostasy is the denial of faith. Right, so new, the word new there, the new covenant in the Greek is the word kainos, which basically translates as recently made, fresh, unused, renewed, unprecedented, unheard of, or young. Right? Something young. Something that is just becoming mature. Immature. Kai, the first part of it, it's a compound word, kai. We studied kai before when we did the fourfold ministry. When Yeshua ascended, he gave gifts to men, some to be apostles, evangelists, prophets, and okay, so it was apostles, prophets, teachers, no, not teachers,
No.
evangelists,
Kind of what
and
was
shepherds.
written earlier there in the
Yes.
bottom.
Shepherds, right? Kai, even teachers, right? So he makes a distinction between the four and the last one. In other words, the Kai there, that word Kai, translated as even, means that all these guys must be teachers. It's not a separate one as we were taught. Apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, all, or Kai, even, all or even, teachers. It enhances these first four by saying they are all, even teachers. Right? It's a word that enhances, it lifts up to the next level. So that's even,
nos.
Kai. Nos comes from Greek word neos.
New.
Where we get the word new.
So it
Neos.
makes even newer.
But neos means a young man. It's a young man. It's used of a young man. It's also used of a youth. And it means also an immature man.
So the guy from the Matrix is immature.
No.
Yes, an immature man. Right? So this word basically means even an immature covenant. Behold, I give you an unprecedented, immature covenant. He's talking about the maturity of the covenant. Because he hasn't been finished. Right? Yeshua said, I did not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill. Okay. So, what did Yeshua come to do? Because the law was given, right? And then it says that he found fault. The fault was not in God, was it?
No, in man.
Perfect.
Where did he find the fault?
On man.
The people.
In Israel. Right? So Yeshua came to repair that fault. To fix it. Right? So as to bring maturity to the covenant. An unprecedented thing. He came to fix that which was broken, wrong. It's not a new covenant as such. It's the same one. That's what that word tells you. It's the same covenant. Well, let's talk about obsolete, right? Because it's become obsolete now, right? Well, has it become obsolete? Let's look at the Greek.
Nope.
Obsoletos.
Still current.
Obsoletus.
Just because the other OS doesn't make the Greek.
US.
Yes, Christos.
Christus.
Pala
Paladino.
y o.
Paladio. Palayo.
Palayo.
Paleo.
Es de pelado. Pelado.
Paleo means to
Pelado.
Palayo is Spanish.
wax old,
Pelado.
Italian.
Oh,
to grow old.
Italian. Pelado.
Watol.
What do?
No.
Okay, your
Decaying?
it's like a thing.
Guaton.
Wax
So,
Decay. Wax on.
wax on, what's on?
Wax on, wax off.
Sincera.
Then you said wax on, wax off.
Sincero.
wearing out. Does that sound like obsolete?
Waxing out. No.
Okay, sorry. Hold on. We'll do that. I'll give you the root word. The root word is pelai. And pelai means of old. Oh, so it comes from the old one. Okay. From old. See, it's not a new thing as that, but it's not obsolete. It's from old. From time passing. You getting the picture? Right? It's wearing out from time passing. Right? So the covenant that was with Abraham is passing. Right? So it's not gone, it's not obsolete. It's not obsolete. Not obsolete. It's passing, it's decaying, it's coming to fruition, it's coming to an end, it's now come to a place where it's maturing and it's now wearing old. Yeah? So it's been brought to the place of maturing as a young man, right? It's been renewed or made to come to a place of maturity through Messiah, and is wearing out, right? So this
It's being restored. It's like a
this tense,
restoration.
yeah, that's right. So this tense is what they're saying is they're active tenses, the present time, right? But they also have a future tense. So all these verses are active. That's your word, active. Right? They are active at the moment that you're saying it. And it's a future tense, it's a present tense, and it's also a future tense. What is has also been and will also be, right? There's 3 times that God speaks in. So the future tense has not been fulfilled. So this so-called new covenant is actually a renewed covenant, or a covenant that has come to, that has been immature up to that point, right? But it's now becoming old, waxing old. It's growing to the place of decay, to the point of fulfillment, of being fulfilled. But it hasn't happened yet, because it's still active. It's still an active verb. It's not something that has finished. You understand that part?
Yep. Yes.
It's an active verb. It's a moving verb. It hasn't finished. It's not dead yet. So it's not obsolete, because obsolete is a dead word.
Yep.
Obsolete is a finite word. It's finished. It's obsolete. It's done, gone, finished. But in the Greek, this is an active verb. It means it's still going on, and will continue to.
Making obsolete.
Yeah. It will make obsolete in the end. So we can argue that that word there is not correct. Neither is the word new. They both translate it wrong. Because new symbolizes that an old thing has finished. It's a finite word as well. And a new thing has begun. Right?
Yep.
So, new is pointing out that there is an end, where this verse is not kainos, it's not showing that something is ended. On the contrary, it's pointing out to the previous one. Yep.
Try and put in a practical sense. Say that if you had a place that was an icon, and over time, the sun, the weather, inclements start to decay, make it dull and not very standing out.
Yeah.
Here comes someone says, we're going to renew, we're going to
Restore
paint
it.
it, restore it, to bring it up. It's not done
Yeah.
with, it's just you're restoring to bring it up so that it shines the importance of the
Yeah.
whole process to begin with.
You bring it back to its former
To-
glory.
that's right,
Yeah.
and that's probably what that's saying.
And it's giving you, and that last one is giving you the understanding that it will continue to decay.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so that out of the way. Romans 15, verse 7 to 12.
Question 1141.
QRS?
1141?
Yes. I thought you saying the time is 11.
No, the page.
So Romans 15:7.
Yep, 74.
Therefore accept one another just as Messiah also accepted you, to the glory of God. For I declare that Messiah has become a servant to the circumcised for the sake of God's truth, in order to confirm the promises given to the patriarchs, and for the Gentiles to glorify God for his mercy. As it is written, for this reason I will give you praise among the Gentiles, and I will sing to your name. And again it says, rejoice, O Gentiles, with his people. And again, praise Adonai, all you Gentiles, and let all the peoples praise him. And again, Isaiah says, there shall be a shoot of Jesse, and the one who arises to rule the Gentiles, in him shall the Gentiles hope.
Right, and Abraham, the promise was, you, Abraham, all the nations shall be blessed. And Yeshua said, I did not come except for the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Yep.
And here it's telling you that Yeshua is a servant to the circumcised. He's a servant to the nations. Well, he's telling you now.
Right.
He's a servant to the circumcised.
To the ones who believed in the faith and come into the covenant.
To the promise of Abraham. Because it's pointing you to the law of circumcision. Through Abraham. It is through Abraham that all the nations shall be blessed. In fact, there are many verses in the Old Testament that tell you, no uncircumcised shall enter the holy city when it comes down. Right? Uncircumcised of flesh and of heart. Both existed in the Old Testament too. Circumcision of the heart and circumcision of the flesh. And it says, no one shall enter who is uncircumcised. I think it's in Isaiah. So again, Yeshua, the servant of the circumcised. If you're not Israel, he didn't come for you. If you're not a Hebrew, he's got no part with you. He told the Canaanite woman that. She, by her faith, grafted into Abraham without even knowing that she was doing it. Right? That's why he rejoiced in what she was saying. But she became a Hebrew, she became an Israelite. By faith. Because Abraham's children come through faith, right? We saw that before. But you still have to be Israel, you still have to be sons of Abraham. So the laws and the promises to Abraham still stand. Therefore the law stands. And Israel as a nation stands not because they are of the flesh necessarily, but because they are of faith. So all still stands. It's not a new covenant, but a renewed one. One that was unheard of. That was unprecedented. One that came to maturity with Messiah and is waxing old until his return. Romans 15, So also he was servant of the circumcision. Hebrews 11:39 to 12:2. Can somebody read that one?
Twelve
11.
Hebrews 12:2.
11:39 to 12:2. So the last few verses of 11 and then chapter 12.
39. And having obtained witness through the belief, all these did not receive the promise, Elohim having provided what is better for us, that they would not be made perfect apart from us. We too, when having so great a cloud of witnesses all around us, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with the endurance the race put before us, looking to the princely leader and the perfecter of our belief,
Amen.
Jehovah, who for the joy of what was put before him endured the stakes, having despised the shame, and sat down at the right hands of Jehovah. Ready?
Yeah, two. Just two verses. Right. So what is this about a better promise that we read before in Hebrews 8?
Yeshua.
Right?
He's the actual sacrifice.
Okay. A better promise. What's the better promise? He tells you there, verse 39, he tells you the better promise. What is talking about in the better promise?
It'll be in your heart.
Through faith, belief.
It comes through faith. The first one came through faith too. The faith of Abraham.
Torah will be in your heart.
Torah will be in your heart. Yep, that's part of it.
Witnessing.
Verse 39 is right there.
Having obtained witness through the belief, all this stuff will receive the promise.
What promise didn't receive? What promise didn't they receive? There was a promise that they didn't receive. What didn't they receive?
Yeshua?
The inheritance of the land? Forever? Yeah?
Yeah, because they didn't get everything that they were told to.
Well, they sort of got it at first,
Yeah.
but then they lost it because there was fault found in them, right? That's what God said. There was fault in them. So he had to get him out of the land. So the inheritance of the land is the promise that they didn't get. What else?
Protection?
What does 39 say?
Oh, just wondering whether protection would be one of them, because they still ended up being killed and
they would not be made perfect.
Yeah, Elohim having provided what is better for us. We can talk about, protection. That part about being saved from slavery and delivered and blessed. Yeah. So the blessings and the curses, the blessings. Yeah, inheritance of the land, the blessings. Protection, including protection. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you.
Well, if they didn't stay under the covenant, says Elohim having provided what is better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. So being away from the covenant, they cannot fulfill the actual perfection.
Yeah. So that they were kept from perfection, right? What did they have to do every year to fulfill the covenant?
They had to do the feast.
The sacrifice, right? They had to do the sacrifice on Yom Kippur. Because
Amen.
the sacrifice was the only way that they could keep themselves in the Torah, right? To fulfill the terms of the Torah because they sinned.
And he came once and for all to do away with...
And Yeshua came once and for all. So the better promise has to do with this as well, the sacrifice.
With Yom Kippur?
So he's the eternal sacrifice.
The day of
Yehovah sent Yeshua.
so are you
All
saying
sacrifices or just a sacrifice for sin? And peace?
so are you saying that these people hadn't been taking their sacrifice to the temple.
Some of them didn't. That's why they were kicked out of the land. Yeah.
Yep.
But sometimes they couldn't because they had no temple to do it in.
Of course.
Yep.
Yep.
Wasn't that
But then they wouldn't be
in the
land.
70 AD though?
Then they wouldn't be in the land.
Yeah, but
That's after 70 AD.
Yeah.
when they got captive.
Before
So
that too,
what,
when they
what,
were
year would,
captive.
what year do they speculate that Hebrews was written? I can't remember.
Book of Hebrews.
Yeah.
It was after the temple.
After Yeshua died.
Yeah, most of the New Testament was written way after
Yeah,
the
that's what I
70
thought.
AD.
They could pick.
Some bring it up to about 150, some even more.
Okay.
So they didn't have New Testament in the New Testament. So
Yeah.
first century didn't have New Testament
Yeah.
as we have it today. That only happened about 300 AD,
300.
300 to about 600 AD.
So then
Matthew's
could
not
some of
writing before
these
then.
not doing their sacrifices
The
be
letters were
speculation?
written before there and they were circulating, but the actual New Testament as we have it
Not
today,
compiled.
not compiled. Compiled
Revelation.
began about 3 to 600 with the Nicene councils.
Mm.
So these ones that they're saying were, you know, that were mistreated, afflicted, killed off, whatever, are they saying that, is it just speculation that they didn't do their yearly sacrifices, or is it?
No. These are the patriarchs. Just talking
Okay.
about all the people in the Old Testament, all the
Oh,
patriarchs.
okay. Yep,
So
that's cool.
all the patriarchs, they did do sacrifices and stuff like that, but what it meant was that they were not made perfect, so they didn't get the sacrifice of Yeshua. They were not made perfect.
Yeah.
So that they would not be made perfect apart from us.
Yep.
So that we would all partake in the perfection that comes
Yeah.
when Yeshua returns
Yep,
in the
that makes
millennium.
sense.
So this is a future tense thing.
Yep.
It's not for now.
Yep.
So we will all be perfected, resurrected. That's what perfection is. We will all
Yeah.
be resurrected together
Yep.
as one. We will receive our eternal bodies together.
That's cool.
Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yep.
So the promise, the better promise has to do with Yeshua, what he did. That's the point of conjunction with this thing. But it's not about a different promise. It's a better promise because we have a better sacrifice. One that doesn't have to be renewed every year.
Could it be said in a way it's a better fulfillment of the sacrifice?
It's a better fulfillment of the promise.
But the
It is
Catholics
sacrifice.
renew it every week.
Hmm?
The Catholics renew it every week.
Catholics renew it every time.
How?
Every morning, don't they?
With
Yeah, weren't you
the little
confirmed? You
round
should know
bread
this.
they give
I
you.
was gonna say every morning.
You know?
Still talking,
Yep,
you
the
have
body and the
Every
blood
morning.
of Messiah, the crucified
All about
again. You're actually taking the physical body of Messiah. Anyway, it's abominations. So all these things were bound to the Day of Atonement.
Yom Kippur,
I don't know if it's two.
one,
Day of Atonement. What?
8 times.
So all these things were bound to the Day of Atonement. But in Messiah, that was fulfilled, so that it's not done away with. It's just a better way of doing it. Yep.
Yeah.
In Him, only one time we have to offer it, and that's it. It's done. All we have to do is accept it by faith, and it's done. So salvation doesn't come from the Torah itself, from the law itself. It comes from the sacrifice of Messiah.
Cup of salvation.
Torah is done because they're the instructions of the covenant, the laws of the kingdom. Yep?
Yep.
Alright, moving on. So the promise is not separate or made obsolete from the law. Is that right? The promise is part of the law.
See.
The law that was given, it hasn't changed. Matthew 5:17 to 20, Yeshua said, I came not to do away with the law, but to fulfill it. Plerut. What does that word mean? Plerut. Please bring this word and
To do.
sear it into your forehead, I don't know.
What is
Burn
the
it
Shem
into
Tov
your mind.
say?
Engrave it.
That's it.
The Shem Tov message.
With fire. So, okay. Matthew, don't have to read it, just to know it. Matthew 5,
No, Matthews.
and it's from
17.
verse 17 to 20. I did not come to do away, destroy, make obsolete the law, but to fulfill it. That's it, it's finished, guys. It's fulfilled.
I did not come to do away with the law, but to do away with it.
Yeah, I did not come to do away with the law, but to fulfill. Double L?
I didn't come to do away with the law, just to
Double L?
finish it.
Why not?
One L, then double L next.
Fulfill. Greek. Play.
So we had playo earlier, now we have playro.
Play. To fulfill. Is it to fulfill?
Not really. Sort of.
Problem with that translation.
Again,
It's to make full. Oh, that means it's finished. That means it's
plenitude.
full of.
I did not
Come to destroy the law, but
But
to
to
make it
mature it.
full.
to mature it.
Yep, to
Yeah.
mature it, to overflow. To overflow it. To fill up the world with it. To fill up the world with it. Our cup overflows with the Torah. To overflow, overfill. To let it run free. Right? To fill up. It has connotations with the soul. With the soul of a man, because the soul is believed to be an empty vessel unless it's filled by the Spirit of God, right? So it's to fill up the soul with. That's part of the root. It's not actually the actual translation of this one, but part of the root is to fill up the soul with.
So you can't play Rue cup.
You can overfill the cup. You can play root. You overfill.
Yeah, that's what we do.
But physically, not in a
Kiddush.
spiritual sense.
Play Rue.
Yeah. You can not do away with the cup. You can fulfill it.
You know, but we have to have a
Runs
real
over.
conversation with the translators.
No, but it's a common saying amongst Jews, the fulfillment
I
of
got this
Torah is
list.
considered the correct
Where do we
interpretation
begin?
of Torah.
Yeah.
How do we
It
go?
says, I did not come to make it obsolete, I
Don't
came
worry,
to
I'm-
properly interpret
Properly
it.
interpreted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also one of the things that they were waiting for when Messiah came
So everyone there
to come and
understood it.
teach. Yeah, everyone understood it then, but not now because we're so far away from the Jewish interpretation of what's going
What
on.
you say?
The Rambam and pretty much everyone else says that the what is it?
When
the
Messiah returns, you
no the
play root.
to fulfill the fulfillment of Torah is considered the proper interpretation.
Yeah.
So when he says, "I did not come to make this obsolete, I came to properly interpret it."
Interpret it. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a different spin altogether.
To show you how to do it.
Yeah.
Properly.
And
What
Jews today
rabbis?
still know, huh?
What rabbis say that? This is in
Chazal,
Oh, Hassan.
Rambam. You don't even know Chazal.
We are
Proper
like this.
interpretation.
Stop it.
All right. So we're so far from the original understanding that, and a lot of these translations were done under the Roman Catholic biased. So you have to understand why the translators translated that.
Martin Luther. One.
Martin Luther didn't do anything.
To fill up or embody the soul of it, or the soul with it. Right? To know its fullness, to know its essence, basically. To understand its essence. To give it a body, which is Messiah, right? So the question was, is the promise separate from the law or obsolete from the law? The answer is Galatians 3:21 to 29.
Ian.
I thought it was 11.
Galatians 3, we're reading from 21 to 29.
Is the Torah then against the promises of Elohim? Let it not be. For if a Torah had been given that was able to make alive, truly righteousness would have been by Torah. But the scripture has shut up all mankind under sin, that the promise by belief in Yeshua, Messiah, might be given to those who believe. But before belief came, we were being guarded under Torah, having been shut up for the belief being about to be revealed. Therefore the Torah became our trainer unto Messiah, in order to be declared right by belief. And after belief has come, we are no longer under a trainer. For you are all sons of Elohim through belief in Messiah Yeshua. For as many of you as were immersed into Messiah have put on Messiah. There is not Yehudi nor Greek, there is not slave nor free, there is not male and female, for you are all one in Messiah Yeshua. And if you are of Messiah, then you are seed of Abraham and heirs according to the promise.
So, there we go. In Messiah,
We're one according to the promise. Under Abraham.
Torah is the trainer. What does that mean? Faith makes perfect. Not the Torah. But in Messiah, you are all sons of Abraham and heirs to the promise. Why would he say that? There's a better promise. Who cares about Abraham's promise? Why do we care about Abraham's promise if the promise is a new one?
A promise is a promise.
What do I care?
Yeah,
If
but-
I got a better promise, I don't need Abraham's promise.
But you promised.
He can keep it.
Yeah, but you already promised anyway.
I don't care about that promise. He can keep it.
You
If there's a
still
new promise, I want the new one.
Yeah, but
Because it's better. It says
the,
it's better,
the
right?
fact that promise comes under a covenant, the covenant cannot be broken.
Yeah. No, but what I'm saying, I'm just being
I know.
ridiculous.
You are.
You're trying to portray a concept which doesn't equate.
Yeah, it doesn't equate, right? It's not logical.
No.
Why would God say here that we are sons of Abraham and heirs to the promise if his promise is rubbish? Because we have a new promise, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. There is no connection in scripture.
Well,
Right,
why
now
can't we
if-
have both?
Now if in Messiah, because Messiah gave a better promise, right? So if Messiah's promise is better because it equates everyone in it through faith, which makes perfect, right? So that we are not made perfect apart from the people of old. So because we are made perfect through faith, just like they were, we're all entering through faith to the promise of Abraham through Messiah, then that makes sense. It's not a new thing, but a thing that has become a better promise because of the sacrifice that we were talking about before, because he became our sacrifice, so that we don't have to be doing the sacrifices over and over again, because we are not under the law, right? We're going to talk about being under the law.
Under the law.
When are you under the law?
When you are
or let's put it the other way around. When is the law over you?
When you break it.
That's right, when you actually go outside the boundaries.
Yeah. When you break the law is all over you. You are guilty. So the
Breaking
law is applied on you,
lawlessness.
put on you. Right? You're under the law. So we are not under the law because we are free from the law through Messiah's sacrifice. Right? Torah is the trainer. Right? What are we being trained to do?
That is
Torah is the trainer. What are we being trained to do?
because that's what we have to keep in the same way. When Yeshua comes, we're going to be doing the same thing as we've been doing with Torah.
Exactly. So let's say you're being trained in Spanish.
See.
Why would you be trained in Spanish?
Because you're going to go to Spain one day.
Because you're going to use it somewhere, right?
Well, let's be trained in
But
Hebrew
go to a
because we're going to
Spanish
use it one day.
You're going to use it one day. Right? Simple. If you're being trained in the field of physics, why are you being trained in the field of physics?
So you can homeschool your children one day.
You just had to throw that one in, didn't you? What a good pun.
Chemistry, I mean, you name it.
Ja.
When you are trained as a pilot or, you know, how to use weapons or, you know,
You're trained into
You're
something
trained
to fulfill. But
to fulfill that, to do it, right? To do it. To play rude, to fill it up, to overflow, to do it. Change play rude to do it. Right? You are training to do something. So if we are trained in the Torah, it's so that we can do the Torah.
So we can live in the Torah.
Right? So that we are not placed under the law anymore. Because in Messiah we have to sacrifice once and for all. We don't need to go every year and sacrifice over and over again for sin and for peace. Those things are done with because he fulfilled it once and for all. The righteous for the unrighteous. Right? But the promise is not different. It's the same. It's just been explained to us. It's just been made mature. It's just been fixed. Refreshed for us. It's not made obsolete. Right? It's decaying towards the coming of Messiah. It's to the place where we're no longer going to need to have anyone teach it to us. Yeah, the fulfillment of Messiah's millennial reign, when people will no longer be needing to be taught, because we will be with him. We will know the Torah. It will be in our hearts and in our minds. But that hasn't happened. We're not in the millennial reign yet. Right?
Gen Z.
Well, the Torah is the laws of the kingdom.
The laws of the kingdom.
So
Yep.
we're being trained to live in the kingdom.
To live in the kingdom.
Yeah.
Under the covenant of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. To the promise that he made to this man. He knew Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. The nations shall be blessed. They're allowed to come in. That's the gospel. The gospel is that. The promise of Abraham is now open to everyone. You can be part of the Hebrews. You can be part of Israel. But if you're not part of Israel, don't pretend that Messiah is going to come for you. Because he came only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. If you're not part of that house, you're out of the house. Simple as that. Alright, next week, or next time we come together for Apologetics, we'll look at Galatians chapter 3.
6:11.
No. Alright, let's pray. Ian, lead us off, please.
Sure. Thank you for this day you've given us. Thank you for this Shabbat, and thank you for this teaching that Pablo was able to give us, and that we were able to learn all these things. I pray that you can help us to take all the information that you want us to take from it, so that we can apply it to our daily lives. Thank you for this day that we've been able to come all together to gather and have fellowship with one another. And thank you that we've been able to have a good Shabbat, and that we've been able to rest from all the work that we've been doing this week. And I pray that you can give us a good rest of the night as we end this day. And I pray that you can keep us safe when we go back home, that we can get there safely. I pray all of this in your Son's name, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
Amen. תודה רבה. שבת שלום.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. See you.
רגע, Ian.